I, 28M, need some objective perspectives on a situation that's completely torn my family apart. This involves my older brother Zachary, 32M, my ex Nadine, 27F, and my parents who seem to think I'm the villain in this story. Let me start from the beginning. 3 years ago, I met Nadine at my best friend's housewarming party. She immediately stood out, not just because she was beautiful, but because she had this magnetic personality that drew everyone in. She came from old money. Her grandparents had built a tech company from scratch in the 80s that was now worth millions. Nadine worked there as a senior marketing executive, though everyone in our social circle knew it was mainly because of her family connections. The first 6 months of our relationship were like a dream. Nadine was everything I thought I wanted: smart, ambitious, and seemingly caring. We had this instant connection, and things moved fast. We moved in together after 6 months, which my parents thought was too soon, but I was convinced she was the one. She was always talking about our future, planning expensive trips, discussing which upscale neighborhoods we should live in, and hinting at marriage. But looking back, there were so many red flags I chose to ignore. Nadine was obsessed with status and money in a way that made me uncomfortable. She'd constantly compare our lifestyle to her rich friends, making comments about how we needed a bigger apartment or a fancier car. She'd suggest I should take risks with investments or switch to a higher paying job, even though I was doing well as a software developer at a stable company. She'd make these subtle but cutting remarks about how her grandparents would help set us up in life if they approved of me, implying that my current success wasn't enough. I noticed she'd get especially critical when my brother Zachary was around. Zachary had always been the golden child in our family, despite never holding down a job for more than a few months. He'd quit or get fired, then live off our parents until he found something new. But my parents always made excuses for him, saying he was too talented to settle for ordinary jobs. About a year into my relationship with Nadine, Zachary started coming around our place more often. He was between jobs again and would show up unannounced, sometimes staying for hours. I thought nothing of it at first. He was my brother, and I was happy he seemed to be taking an interest in my life for once. But then I started noticing things that felt off. Nadine would be really dressed up when he visited, even on casual weekends. They'd have these long conversations about investments and luxury lifestyles while I was working from home. Sometimes they'd lower their voices when I walked into the room. I had this gut feeling something wasn't right, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. After all, this was my brother and my girlfriend, the two people I trusted most in the world. How wrong I was. The day I discovered the truth started like any other. I left for work in the morning, but came home early around lunch because I had a migraine. I heard laughter coming from our bedroom as soon as I opened the front door. When I opened the bedroom door, I found Zachary and Nadine in bed together. What hurt the most wasn't even catching them, it was their reaction. They didn't even try to pretend they were sorry. Nadine actually looked annoyed at being interrupted and said she and Zachary had a special connection that I could never understand. She said they'd been seeing each other for months and that Zachary understood her needs better than I ever could. Zachary just sat there with his smug smile and said something about how I should have seen this coming, given how well they got along. I moved out that same day. I packed what I could carry and went to stay with a friend. The next few weeks were a blur of pain, anger, and disbelief. But what made everything so much worse was my parents' reaction. Instead of supporting me or being angry at their son for betraying his own brother, they actually tried to convince me this was a good thing. They said I should be happy that at least Nadine was staying in the family. They suggested that since Zachary was the older son, he deserved someone successful like Nadine more than I did. My mom even had the nerve to say that maybe this was for the best because Nadine's family connections could help Zachary finally establish himself in his career. I cut contact with all of them after that. I focused on my work, moved to a new apartment, and tried to rebuild my life. Then last month, I received a wedding invitation from Zachary and Nadine. I immediately threw it in the trash, but my parents started what I can only call a harassment campaign. They showed up at my place multiple times, called me nonstop, and sent endless texts. They claimed my absence would raise too many questions in our social circle. They were especially worried about what Nadine's grandparents would think. Apparently, they didn't know how Nadine and Zachary's relationship really started. My parents literally begged me to attend and give a speech. They said it would show everyone there were no hard feelings in the family. After days of relentless pressure and guilt-tripping, I agreed. Not because I forgave them, but because I was tired of being painted as the bitter ex who couldn't move on. The wedding was exactly as extravagant as you'd expect from someone like Nadine. Her grandparents were the guests of honor. They'd apparently promised her a significant inheritance if she settled down with someone responsible and proved she could maintain a stable relationship. Everyone kept talking about how perfect Zachary and Nadine were for each other, how they were soulmates. It made me sick. When it was time for speeches, I took the microphone. I started by talking about love and trust, and how sometimes the people closest to us can surprise us. Then I shared my story, how I found my girlfriend and brother in bed together, how they showed no remorse, how they'd been sneaking around for months while I worked to support Nadine. I kept my tone calm and professional, even thanking Nadine's grandparents for being there to hear the truth about their granddaughter's character and choices. The silence in the room was deafening. Nadine's grandparents looked absolutely horrified. Apparently, they'd been told Nadine and Zachary met through mutual friends after she and I had amicably broken up. They left immediately, and I heard through mutual friends that they were reconsidering Nadine's position in both the family business and their will. Zachary tried to confront me, but I just walked out. My parents were furious, saying I'd ruined everything. But I felt relieved. The truth was finally out. Now my phone is blowing up with angry messages from Zachary and Nadine. They're saying I ruined their future and their chances at the inheritance. My parents are demanding I fix things, but I don't see why I should clean up their mess. Ida? Update 1. I wasn't planning to update so soon, but the fallout from the wedding has been more intense than I expected. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, and I need to get it off my chest. First, the biggest news: my friend who works at Nadine's family company told me that her grandparents have officially cut her out of their will. They also called an emergency board meeting to discuss her position in the company. Apparently, they were already concerned about her materialistic behavior and lack of work ethic, but learning how she and Zachary got together was the final straw. They felt betrayed not just by her actions, but by her attempts to manipulate them with lies about her relationship with Zachary. Through the same friend, I learned some interesting details about Zachary and Nadine's plan. They had been scheming this for months before the wedding. Their original plan was to get married quickly, prove to her grandparents that they were a stable, responsible couple, and secure her inheritance. They had even started looking at million-dollar houses and luxury cars, convinced that the money was practically theirs already. Zachary was so confident about their plan working that he quit his latest job, a decent position at a marketing firm that our uncle had helped him get, because he thought he wouldn't need to work once they had Nadine's inheritance. Since the wedding, my phone hasn't stopped buzzing with messages from Nadine. She switches between begging and threatening me every few hours. 1 minute she's pleading with me to talk to her grandparents and explain that I exaggerated things at the wedding. The next minute she's threatening legal action for defamation and saying she'll make my life hell. She keeps claiming that I misrepresented their relationship and that things weren't as simple as I made them sound in my speech. But when I asked her to explain exactly how finding her in bed with my brother could possibly be misrepresented, she had no answer. She just started ranting about how I was too narrow-minded to understand their special connection. What really gets me is that my parents are still taking their side in all of this. They showed up at my apartment yesterday unannounced, barging in as soon as I opened the door. My mom was crying about how I needed to help fix this because family comes first. My dad kept saying that what's done is done, and now it's my responsibility to help my brother. They actually had the nerve to suggest that I should contact Nadine's grandparents and tell them I lied at the wedding because I was jealous of Zachary and Nadine's relationship. When I refused, my dad got angry and said I was being selfish and immature. He said that as the younger son, I should be more understanding of Zachary's needs. But the most revealing conversation came last night. Around 2 a.m., I got a call from Zachary. He was completely drunk and could barely form coherent sentences, but what he said was eye-opening. He started ranting about how I destroyed his chance at an easy life. He admitted that he'd pursued Nadine because he knew about her inheritance prospects. He kept saying things like, "You have a career, you don't need the money like I do, and I'm the older son, I deserve this more than you." He even revealed that he and Nadine had discussed ways to minimize contact with her grandparents after getting the inheritance, so they wouldn't have to keep up the responsible couple act. The more he talked, the clearer it became that their entire relationship was built on greed and manipulation. He bragged about how easy it was to seduce Nadine, saying she was already unhappy with my stable but modest lifestyle. According to him, all he had to do was promise her a more exciting life and she was ready to betray me. He seemed proud of this, like deceiving his own brother was some kind of achievement. The whole conversation made me feel sick. When I told him how disgusted I was, he just laughed and said I was always too serious about things like loyalty and honesty. Then he started crying and demanding I fix things with Nadine's grandparents because he deserved a good life after everything our parents put him through, whatever that means. Our parents have done nothing but support him his entire life. I hung up on him and blocked his number. I've also blocked Nadine, but she keeps finding new ways to contact me. She even got some of our mutual friends to relay messages, though most of them stopped after I explained the full situation. I'll update again if anything significant happens, but right now I'm just trying to process everything. The level of manipulation and entitlement from everyone involved is overwhelming. The only positive thing is that the truth is finally out, and Zachary and Nadine are facing the consequences of their actions. Update 2: things have gotten so much worse than I could have imagined. After my last update, the situation with Zachary and Nadine spiraled completely out of control. Their relationship fell apart spectacularly once they realized the inheritance money wasn't coming. At first, they tried to maintain appearances. Nadine's parents got her a job at a regular marketing firm after she lost her position at the family company, but she quit after 2 weeks because she said the work was beneath her. Zachary still hasn't found a job. Apparently, he's been telling potential employers that he's taking time off to deal with family issues. They started fighting constantly about money. Their wedding had cost a fortune because they were so sure they'd have the inheritance to pay it off. Now they're drowning in debt. They had to move out of their luxury apartment and are staying at my parents' house, which is just making everything worse. Last week, things reached a breaking point. I was at work, in the middle of an important client meeting, when my parents showed up unannounced. They walked right past reception and burst into the conference room. My mom was crying hysterically, saying I had to help them because Zachary was talking about declaring bankruptcy. My dad was red-faced and shouting about family obligations. They caused such a scene that security had to escort them out. My boss called me into his office afterward. He was understanding about the situation but warned me that I needed to keep my family drama away from work. I was mortified. These were clients we'd been trying to land for months, and now they probably think we're completely unprofessional. That evening, I went home to find my parents sitting in my apartment building's lobby. They'd been waiting for hours. My dad started immediately about how I needed to help Zachary financially. They had this whole plan worked out. I would let Zachary and Nadine move in with me, help them pay off their wedding debt, and maybe even get Zachary a job at my company. When I refused, my dad completely lost it. He started shouting about how I was a terrible brother and a selfish son. He actually threatened to disown me if I didn't help Zachary get back on his feet. My mom just sat there crying, saying things like we raised you better than this and how can you be so cruel to your own brother? It was like they were living in some alternate reality where I was the bad guy for not wanting to support the people who betrayed me. That was the moment I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I went up to my apartment, packed what I could carry, and booked a hotel room. I've blocked my parents, Zachary, and Nadine on everything: phone, email, social media. I'm looking for a new apartment in a different part of the city where they won't be able to find me easily. Word of all this drama has spread through our extended family. My cousin Lisa called to tell me that my parents have been telling everyone that I'm mentally unstable and vindictive, claiming that I sabotaged Zachary's chance at happiness because I was jealous of him. Most of my cousins know better and support me, but my aunts and uncles are divided. Some think I should help Zachary because he's family, while others are appalled by how my parents are handling this. This whole situation has made me realize how toxic my family dynamic has always been. Looking back, I can see a pattern of my parents always enabling Zachary's behavior because he's the oldest son. They covered for him when he got kicked out of college for cheating. They paid off his credit card debt multiple times. They always made excuses for why he couldn't hold down a job. And now they expect me to do the same. A few days ago, I ran into one of Nadine's bridesmaids at a coffee shop. She told me that Nadine has been telling people that I manipulated her grandparents and ruined her life out of spite. Apparently, she conveniently leaves out the part about cheating on me with my brother. She's trying to paint herself as the victim in all this, and some people are actually buying it. I'm working with HR to transfer to a different branch of my company, preferably in another city. I realize now that I need a completely fresh start, away from all this drama and manipulation. I'll post another update if anything significant happens, but right now I'm focusing on rebuilding my life somewhere new. Update 3: This will be my final update. After going no contact with my family, I finally found some peace. I took that transfer my company offered and moved to a different city. The past 3 months have been focused on building a new life, and honestly, it's been going better than I expected. But of course, news about my family still reaches me through mutual friends. Zachary and Nadine's marriage imploded spectacularly. Without the inheritance to look forward to, they had nothing holding them together. Their constant fighting about money turned into bitter arguments about whose fault it was that their plan failed. Eventually, Nadine moved back in with her parents, who were also furious with her for embarrassing the family in front of their social circle. A friend who still talks to my brother told me that Zachary tried to contact Nadine's grandparents directly. He showed up at their office unannounced, claiming he could explain everything. Security had to escort him out. Apparently, he was shouting about how they were ruining his life by cutting off the inheritance. Real classy move there, bro. Zachary is still living with our parents, unemployed and bitter. He's been telling anyone who'll listen that I destroyed his life because I was jealous of his happiness. He even tried to spread rumors at my old workplace that I had mental health issues and had made up the whole cheating story. Fortunately, my former colleagues know better. Nadine isn't doing much better. Her parents managed to get her another job through their connections, but it's nowhere near as prestigious as her position at her grandparents' company. From what I hear, she's been complaining nonstop about having to work a normal job like everyone else. She even tried to start a social media campaign painting herself as a victim of family betrayal, but it backfired when people who knew the truth started commenting. Last week, my cousin reached out with news that my parents wanted to arrange a family dinner to talk things through. They claimed they'd had time to reflect and realize their mistakes. They wanted to make amends and rebuild our relationship. For a moment, I actually considered it. But then my cousin mentioned that the real reason for the dinner was to discuss how I could help Zachary financially. Apparently, he's in serious debt from the wedding and some bad investments he made when he thought he'd have access to Nadine's inheritance. My parents thought that since I'm doing well in my career, I should step up and help my brother get back on his feet. Some things never change. They're still trying to make me responsible for fixing Zachary's mistakes. They still see me as the younger son who should sacrifice his own well-being for his older brother. The only difference is that now they're trying to be sneakier about their manipulation. I declined the dinner invitation. I've realized that nothing has really changed, they still expect me to be the family scapegoat. My parents aren't sorry for how they treated me. They're just sorry that their plan to secure Zachary's future through Nadine fell apart. This whole experience taught me something important: sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. Blood relation doesn't give people the right to abuse your trust or take advantage of you. I'm happier now than I've been in years, building a life surrounded by people who actually respect me. Someone asked me recently if I regret exposing Zachary and Nadine at their wedding. The answer is no. They chose to build their relationship on betrayal and lies, and now they're facing the consequences of their choices. I won't apologize for telling the truth. Thanks to everyone who supported me through this journey. Your advice and encouragement helped me stay strong when I doubted myself. This is my final update. I'm closing this chapter of my life for good.